Planning Posse people. Woohoo! Welcome to another bonus interview for your program. And this month I am so excited and delighted to be able to introduce you to Erica Sosna. Welcome, Erica.
Hello, nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and who you serve?
Okay, for sure. So I'm Erica. I'm the author of a book called Your Life Plan, which is a book all about helping people to discover what it is that they really want to do and then put in place the plan to make that happen. And in the most part, I focus on working with professionals in their 30s to make a significant career change, to go like that, make a really big change that really works for them and suits who they are and their definition of success. And I do that through coaching programs, group programs, one-on-one, talks, books, and all kinds of other fun ways of working.
Wow, exciting.
Yeah, I love it. It's great work.
Nice. Well, so obviously you have a lot of experience about planning and about shifting mindset and about just shifting how you do things in general. So why don't you share with us a little bit about your experience with planning in the past, what you've tried, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and all that stuff.
Okay, great. So I guess my journey around planning and planning techniques started when I combined a couple of things. So the first job I had, they sent me on a project management training. And whilst this training was quite dry and it was mostly about IT, I really got that actually the skill set of being able to think, where do I want to go? Or what are the success criteria of the thing I want to achieve? Whether that's putting in a new kitchen or installing a new computer system or climbing a mountain, right? Being able to articulate what success looks like and then to be able to work backwards from there could be really useful as a technique. Mm-hmm. And so I took what I had learned there and I made it super simple and just started to apply it to my own life. And it just had really phenomenal results. And when I combined that with the other thing that I started to learn at that time, this was in my early 20s, which was storytelling. I'm a trained storyteller and I tell biographical stories, so I tell stories that are true. I noticed that once you were able to really own and acknowledge your story, as in your history, where you'd come from as a woman or a man, what your genetic heritage, the twists and turns of your life, you could then also look at, so what's the next chapter? Where do I want to go next? And the combination of those two things of being really able to explore the tools by which you help someone to really own their story, and then to be able to go, okay, so this is where I've come from, this is where I'm going, how do I get there? That was where the planning piece came in. So it started to have really amazing results for me, everything from traveling around Southeast Asia, just deciding I was going to do that, to putting on a storytelling show, having no training whatsoever, did a solo show at the Edinburgh Festival 6 months later, buying my first home. I started to use it to make big things happen in my life. So I feel very grateful to have learned all of that quite early on. But of course, not everything goes according to a plan, right? So some of the things that I learned along the way was that I'm someone who's always really optimistic about how long something will take, right? So I always underestimate how much effort it's going to take, particularly detail things, right? So I had to learn to both extend my deadlines psychologically, because otherwise I was always feeling behind, I was always feeling disappointed, I was always feeling I was catching up with myself all the time, but also to some extent trust the process, because sometimes if I thought I was procrastinating or that the plan wasn't going according to plan, maybe there was a kind of larger picture actually, and maybe a good reason why some things should be delayed. So an example of that, for example, was some years ago, I had an opportunity to go and talk in the States, but every time that I tried to book the flights, I started crying.
Oh.
And I was like, what is going on? Like, this is a chance to speak at the University of Berkeley, and it's a big break and everything. But I just could not bring myself to book the ticket. It was really strange. And the time got closer and closer, and I realized I wasn't going to make it. And then the week that I was supposed to be in California, there was that big old volcanic ash situation, which had people stranded in the States for months on end, right?
Yeah.
The Icelandic, right? You remember that? It was like 2010 or something. I was like, whoa, some part of me knew that. Some part of me knew that, because there was no reason why I did not just press yes on the flight that I was booking. So I learned that sometimes when you think you're behind, there's a bigger reason why you're not doing stuff. I also had to teach myself that just because I've had a good idea, it doesn't mean it should be immediately actioned, right? Especially if they're like, I'm quite a sort of creative thinker, so they're like, oh, let's learn Spanish. Oh, let's go and do this big thing, So because I underestimate how long something will take, because I take on more than I can reasonably do, I've had to learn to capture like my ideas in an ideas book as a someday maybe. Like, Erica, you actually can't do that right now because you're doing this, this, and this, but I value the idea. And so I'm going to give you space to support it and to brainstorm it and to research it. But just because you had the idea, it doesn't mean you should immediately quit your job or elope or whatever, right? So I've had to learn to kind of manage the difference between imagination and leaping into action. It's good to be someone who's proactive, but it's also good to think through carefully how you manage that. So it's been, a discovery journey on both sides.
Oh my gosh, I love hearing this. This is so amazing. And I love the idea book, because I need to implement that, because I have pages and pages and pages, and having it actually in a journal is perfect. I mean, actually, I've got sticky notes. I've got things everywhere about things that I want to do, that I'm inspired to do, but not necessarily right now. And so having them all in one book is perfect. And I love that you shared about how some part of you knew that, something's going to happen. This is not going to work out. And you honored that. That's so huge. That's so huge. And I think part of a lot of the planning process is recognizing that inner voice that we can't explain, that makes no logical sense to us, that we can't pinpoint as to why or why not we can or can't do something. It's just honoring that little small voice inside of us.
Yeah. Wow. And it's not always easy, because we're quite hard on ourselves sometimes, and we think that, hey, why are you slacking? Why are you not doing this thing? But I've learned to really trust that, because actually it's not that often that I'm literally emotionally paralyzed about doing something, that I can feel my heels dragging really, really hard and fast. And I've learned through my own mistakes that when I don't honor that, horrible stuff happens. Like, real screw ups, So I had to do that a few times before now I just go, whoa, I can't tell you why, but I've got a funky feeling about this. We're not going here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice.
Sometimes like the ash, the volcanic ash, it becomes really clear why that would have been a problem. Sometimes it doesn't, and you have a slight sense of FOMO, right? Like, I could have done this, or but I've learned to just respect that, because it's always served me.
Oh gosh, how exciting. And what a blessing for you to be able to recognize how it shows up for you in your life, and how you, oh no, this is a funky feeling, I'm not going to go there. That's awesome. So why don't you share with us one of your, the pivotal moment when you really knew in your life or your business that you knew that you had to learn how to create or use a planning system in your life. Because, planning is all fine and dandy, but if we're not listening to that little internal knowing, and if we're so caught up with all these ideas and whatnot, life can get the better of us. And when we have systems in place, then we can start to recognize that voice even more. You can recognize, I've got an idea, but I'm not going to go there right now. And, most of that comes from having some type of pivotal experience in your life where you realize, wait a minute, I've got all these ideas. I've been wanting to implement them. I'm not listening to my intuition. And all of a sudden, excuse the vernacular, shit hits the fan. And we have this pivotal experience where we're like, oh my gosh, I can't live like this anymore. I have to create a system to where I can actually honor that voice inside me and honor those things that I really want to do and that I'm meant to do. So why don't you share with us what your pivotal moment was?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm thinking about if I can name for you like a specific moment. And I think probably it was I became like a social entrepreneur by accident in my 20s. Like I had done various jobs I didn't like. I'd identified what I did want to do, which was around like personal development and inspirational speaking and coaching, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I was offered an opportunity for which I needed to become a small business in order to do the opportunity. So I had like no strategy beyond this wonderful opportunity had fallen into my lap, and I took it, right? And because I hadn't planned that, because there was no strategy, because it wasn't on my plan, it kind of came to me. For the first few months it was great. I was doing all these interesting projects, working with universities and schools about careers and things. And then the work started to quieten down and peter out. And because I hadn't made any kind of plan for how I might get extra work or what it was as a business that we stood for or any of that sort of thing, suddenly there was a kind of tumbleweed environment in which there was no work at all. And the way that I responded to that was the way that I think I had previously responded to a lot of things, which is throw a heck of a lot of stuff out there and just see what lands, right? So it's kind of like this sort of manic farmer, like throwing seed in every direction, going like, yes, I could do this, I could do that, I could do that, I could do the other, and sort of putting together all these offers and propositions for different client groups and different audiences. And what I learned was that although there was no shortage of creativity within me, and that's kind of cool, and that I was hardworking and I was prepared to put in loads of energy and time to make something work, actually those two things weren't enough. Because in the dispersal of the energy in 100 directions, actually nothing really made progress. And not only did I become confused and exhausted, but those people to whom I was trying to reach also became confused and exhausted. So I guess for me, that was a realization, kind of hit rock bottom, like financially, emotionally, just got really burnt out. And actually, I did actually physically hit rock bottom, which was that I was taking a bunch of kids on a summer camp. And we went to a swimming pool, and I had like 10 minutes off, so I thought I would do some lengths, and it was during the Olympics. And so I climbed onto one of those like little starter boards, those small diving boards, and I looked around to see whether it was okay to dive. There was nothing stopping me diving. And I dived into the water, and the swimming pool had this adjustable bottom, so it would go up and down so that someone with a disability could more easily get into the pool. And someone had forgotten to adjust the bottom.
Oh, no.
And I hit my head on the bottom of it. And I fractured my neck in the same place as Christopher Reeve fractured his neck in the C1. And, luckily, thank God, I got to walk out of the pool with a serious injury, but most people die from that particular injury. Wow. But it taught me that, hang on a minute, it felt to me like a very strong sign that said there is too much going on. You've actually broken your head, like with all of these things. That was a metaphor to me of what happened to me. And so I guess it was at that point that I started to think about how can I contain my creativity and my hard work and have it really focused onto something so that all of the energy goes into something more focused, more directed. And one of the things that I was working with at that time or playing with was this idea of a mission statement or a design statement for someone's career and for their future, much like an organization has a mission or a strategic goal. And I thought, well, maybe creativity might thrive more if you put some constraints around it, if you put some edges around it, which is what planning does for you, right, and what defining what you're trying to do does for you as well. So I have worked with hundreds of people now subsequently to create these mission statements that are so unique it could only be the person that's defining them. and yet they're broad enough that a creative person can find 100 different ways to play inside the constraint. So, for example, my statement is, I use my skills in communicating ideas and my passion for growing people to design tools that help people find work they love, right?
Nice.
So that's mine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of very Erica-y. It's Erica's skills, but it also puts some constraints, right? I can only do things that sit in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So unless learning Spanish is relevant to that, yeah, and sometimes it may well be, I'm going to have to consider whether or not I should be doing that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or if someone presents an opportunity that doesn't sit within that scope, maybe they want me to do a learning program on, I don't know, diversity at work or something, I'm going to say no because it's not in the dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of long response to your question, and not exactly about planning, but I feel that it is because in order to make a plan, you have to decide where you're going.
Yes.
Right, and if you haven't decided where you're going, then any road will take you there, right? Because it doesn't, you know, just like when you type into your GPS, I want to go here,
Yep.
then Google Maps comes up with a plan for how you get there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me, I learned that I needed not just to be able to plan, because I had learned that early, as I shared with you, but really to know where I was going in a very focused way, which meant these are the ways I am not going, these are the things I am not doing, so that 100% of my energy can go into this one thing rather than 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%, and just knackeredness and burnout as a result of that.
What a beautiful gift of freedom that a mission statement like that gives you. Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
Someone once told me that your discipline is your freedom. And when I first heard that, I was like, oh, I hate the word discipline, Discipline sounds like rules and boring, and I'm going to rebel against it. And then I discovered this statement and this process that I've just used to help hundreds of people overcome feeling overwhelmed in the world. And part of the reason for that with us is that we have too many choices. And the neuroscience of the brain is such that your brain can only handle 5 different kinds of variables. And anything more than that, and it just goes, it just becomes overwhelmed, right? So you see that happen when you go to the cereal aisle in like Whole Foods, right? You go, oh, should I have granola? Oh, that one's sugar-free. Oh, that one's buy one, get one free. Oh, that one doesn't have nuts. Do I want gluten? And then you walk away with no cereal because you just can't cope with that. Yeah. So that's the kind of tiny version of that. But that's happening to us now in the information age and the information overload age more than ever. So for a lot of my clients, that kind of, let's just hone in on the beautiful things, and let's give you something that is really you, that is where you really shine, and therefore you can confidently say no, 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 no to like 70% of your other ideas right now. That doesn't mean you can't change the statement in 6 months or a year or 2 years, but in order for you to make progress right now, we have to be able to narrow that focus. And that's what I think planning helps you do.
Yes. What a beautiful thing. Nice. So why don't you share with us a little bit about your planning system that you use?
Okay, for sure. So on the front of the book is this little, you've done it so nicely.
Awesome.
but the reason that I really love this design that they used for the book is because this is exactly my method, basically. Mm-hmm. So you may have come across like Stephen Covey.
Yes.
And he, in his 7 habits, he talks about start at the end and work backwards.
Mm-hmm. So
this structure is actually an example of a method for articulating that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I took his idea and I went, okay, so if I'm working with somebody, first of all, we define the goal, we define the destination. Yeah. And that could be anything from I want to have my first 10 clients to I want to set up a new office to I want to launch a new product or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Nice and clearly stated. We know how to state goals, right, guys? So I'm not going to go into that, right? But something specific that you can measure with some dates and some numbers against. Mm-hmm. And then I say to people, excuse me. Okay, And this is where the storytelling comes in. What? Let's imagine that you've already done that. Let's imagine you've already launched your lingerie line and it's been a sellout success. Okay. The night before it sold out, what do you think you were doing? So we start to imagine as though the story were already done. And we go, okay, the night before, what was I doing? Well, I was probably sending out my final packages going, that's it. We're out of that particular line of bralettes, right? Okay, great. So what do you think happened a week before that? Well, we probably cashed in our final orders from wholesalers and we realized we were going to have to just deliver those and start something new. Okay, great. What about a month before? What about 2 months before? And in that way, we tell the story backwards until we get to this point, which is today. And these are the points at which there are things that you need to do right now, that you can do right now, that feed into that result. So if we took the lingerie example, it might be starting to design your underwear, starting to source the lace, starting to maybe even interview your customers if you have one, or build your website, right? So it helps people, instead of going, most planning techniques go, where am I now? Where do I want to be? What is the first thing that I need to do? But I find that if you access your creative imagination and assume that you had already done that thing, then you're able to work out from the moment before you did it, a week before, a month before, 2 months before, 3 months before, 6 months before, tomorrow, you can work out what is the narrative, what is the flow of things that I need to achieve. And you take it to the stage where there are bite-sized things that you can do right now, this second. And that's really motivating and engaging for people because it chunks it down into things that are really doable, like they realize they can take some action, the first step right now on their big journey. And they also understand that particular step is valuable, because they've already worked out, okay, if I need to be here, then I've got to be able to have sold the lingerie. If I want to sell the lingerie, I've got to produce the lingerie. If I'm going to produce the lingerie, I've got to be able to market the lingerie. If I'm going to do that, then I have to design the lingerie. Okay, so what's the first step? Well, let's do some design. Great, yeah. So it starts to really be motivating because you know that every penny of effort that you put into your piggy bank is helping you to fill up towards that ultimate destination. Plus, we know that the brain can't tell the difference between something that is vividly imagined and something that is real. So putting yourself in the position of, I have already achieved that thing, is a great way of setting up your kind of manifestation and your unconscious focus alongside the very practical stuff, right? Which I know is a big thing for you, right? It's that combination of the two things. I call it, you've got to trust in God or goddess and tether your camel.
Yes.
So,
I love that.
Leave people outside an oasis to go and like have a snack somewhere, right? Of course, like God will protect it, but also tie your camel up, right? So it's the combination of the two things. You know, you need to be able to access the creative imagination, the spiritual connection, the kind of visualized outcome in the future. But then you also need to know, like, so what do I need to do about that? Like, what are the steps that I need to take so that thing, I come closer to that thing?
Nice.
So that's a big technique. I use that a lot with people, and it's called start at the end and work backwards.
Nice. How perfect. So why don't you share with us your biggest lesson learned during this whole planning journey that you've been on?
Whoa, okay. I'm just looking write stuff down, right? I'm just going to show you something. This is my
okay.
This is my whiteboard.
I love it.
I won't be able to see all the things that are on it, but I just want to show it to you because it is my like biggest lesson, which is like write stuff down, okay? Like, and to start with your big idea and your big mission and your big goal, right? And then how does that? So up here I've got like goals for 2017. These are my goals, right? So this is like a shorthand of all of my plans, but it's just on one page, right? That I can rub off and stuff. So I've got an overall goal for 2017. So for example, one of them is to flip the way that I've been generating revenue from consulting to more of the online coaching program. I want to flip the numbers on that, okay? And then there's goals for the month, right, that relate to that annual goal. And in this case, I'm doing some rework on my website. So the goal for this month is to have the rework completed and have all the new copy done to my satisfaction, right? Mm-hmm. And then in the corner, down here,
nice.
It says short term. And short term means like this week, or even today, sometimes I write it every day, what needs doing. So I don't just write a list that's like willy-nilly set of random things. I write lists that go goal, progress to that goal this month. Okay, so progress to that goal this week. Okay, so what's happening today? Nice. And that is really helpful because, again, in the world of information overwhelm and stuffing around on Facebook and all the other ways that we can get distracted, mm-hmm. that works really well. And that's always like on the front of my standing desk. So it's in my face, right? So nice. Write it down, make it a meaningful list, stick it in your face. And the other thing that I found quite helpful, because a lot of us love a list, right? But very often when you write a list, you like cross things out, right? And so I tried an opposite technique. Like say you want to launch a website, okay? Mm-hmm. Instead of crossing all the things out, every time you do something that is useful for the website, you write it on a Post-it note and you stick it somewhere. And you just keep adding and adding and adding and adding. So instead of taking things off a list that you might leave, instead you see this pile of action start to gather up. And that's really motivating because you're like, wow, I've done like 20 things this week, because often you're like, oh, I didn't do enough and all that sort of thing. So I think that is really powerful. And the last thing that I would add is, again, when we set goals, we tend to start from I'm here, I want to get over there. And a way to flip that that's quite motivating is, like when Apollo takes off, right? They go 10, 9, 8, right? They count down the lift off. So 0 is lift off, right? So instead of like 0 being, or day 1 being the day that I start, I make day 0 the day that I finish, right? So if I've said I want to launch a new website in 100 days' time, I don't call that day 100, I call now day 100. And then each day I tick it down. So it's like day 99, day 98, day 97. And that way it becomes non-negotiable that like when it's 0, the rocket takes off. That's it. It's gone. Whoosh, it's in the sky, right? So I find that technique of working down, it's a sort of variation on start at the end and work backwards, but we're just with the numbers of, when we get to 0, we're done. A really good way to keep you motivated because you're like, oh my gosh, there's actually only 13 days left till my TED Talk. Otherwise, you can easily lose track if you're looking ahead that way.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. I think I'm going to implement that today in my business. Yeah, because I always work in 90-day blocks, and that would be perfect because there are certain things that I do want to accomplish by the end of that 90 days. And having that ticker is like, woo, that would be good. Nice.
Yeah, my clients love posting photographs of they're like posting it, they're like, day 43. And they're like, this is how far I am on my Gantt chart. Like, we really kind of have a lot of fun with it. And remember that, the brain likes visual cues. So anything like that is counting down, that's moving progress. That's like why we like sort of charts, right? You can see, I don't know, your sign up rates or whatever. Mm-hmm. So anything visual like that is helpful to the part of your brain that likes to keep track.
Yes. Well, and I love that you mentioned about instead of crossing stuff off, have a Post-it note kind of stack, if you will, of all the things that you have done, because that is true. I mean, there are some times when I've worked all week and then at the end of the week, I'm making my list of things to do for next week, and I feel like, oh my gosh, I still have so much to do. But in reality, I've worked all week making progress towards my goal, but I can't see it because my list is all crossed off. And I mean, I have a monthly task list, but I always make a weekly and a daily one. And that daily one I throw away and recycle daily. And so now I'm actually going to save it keep it in my stack and go, look at what I've done this week, because that is that motivating factor, that it's like, look at how far I've come. It's almost like climbing Everest, and you've been walking and going, oh my gosh, am I even closer? But when you turn and look behind you, you've got all these foothills in between where you started and where you're at now, and you're one step closer, literally and metaphorically, to climbing your Everest, or to that, takeoff of Apollo.
Absolutely. And, Dave Allen, who wrote the book Getting Things Done, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other useful thing he taught me from reading the book was, when you do that thing with your week where you're like, oh, I haven't made the progress I thought I wanted to, he says, like, just track the things you did instead.
Mm-hmm.
So say you had a list of like 4 things you wanted to accomplish today and you did 2 of them. He says, make a line underneath that and write down all the other stuff that you did instead of doing that, because you weren't doing nothing, right? And some of those things will be really valuable, like, things that life admin, things that needed doing.
Mm-hmm.
A client suddenly asked for something, surprises came in that needed responding to.
Yep.
And some of it will be, I spent 40 minutes like on house porn on like Instagram, looking at other people's sofas. It just helps you to be real about where the time has gone. And often you find that the list underneath the line is much longer than the list above it. So that's kind of neat as well, for just accounting for the time and understanding where it's going.
Yes, that's so good, and that's so true. And sometimes we check out because it's not time to do something just yet. And so we go look and we look at people's decorations. I mean, and for actually last year, so this paint color used to be almost this color, this red brick color. And I didn't like it because it was like this whole upstairs. I'm going, oh my goodness. It was just too overwhelming. And I wanted more of a warm, rich color, even though this is a cool color, but I wanted something that was just very luxurious feeling for me. And there was times when I recognized I wanted to work on a project, but I found myself looking at design Instagram accounts, and I kept going back to this color and going and going and going. And finally, over Christmas break, I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. And I painted my whole upstairs. And now when I work, I'm actually more focused because my environment matches that energetic vibe that I've been kind of feeling in my head anyway. And so even when we do space out like that, or check out, or go do something that we think isn't productive, most of the time it ends up being productive, because all of a sudden we see something that inspires us to do something else, or we see an answer or find an answer to something that we've been kind of pondering about how to approach a specific task or a specific thing that we want to do in our business. And so making room and making space for those kind of checkout times, I think, is important to us as well. And to recognize and writing it down, like you said, that's so huge, because, it happens. All of us have been there where we're like, oh my God, I've just spent 20 minutes on Facebook,
Well, and it just might be useful, as you say. It might be, some part of you might be trying to tell you something important, right, through that time spent, like that there's a passion there that you want to feed, or there's a break that you need, or you just love cat videos, right? Like that's okay. Like that's really okay. So it's useful information to track it, rather than to use it. The aim of it is not to use it to whack yourself over the head. It's to really go, oh right, that blue is important.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Well, we are getting close to our time. So, excuse me. I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to meet with us. So why don't you share with our members how they can connect with you outside of this interview?
Yeah, for sure. So my website is ericasosna.com. That's SOS, like save our souls. November apple, Sosna, Erica Sosna. Sosna is pine tree in Polish. And I have a Twitter. If you like Twitter, I'm at Erica Sosna. And so things you can do that might be useful to you if you're thinking, particularly for those of you thinking about like a change of career, change of direction. On the website, there's a career personality quiz, which really helps people to just define, I'm one of those kinds of people. And then how do I then think about my change, or even understand why work hasn't felt like 100% fit for me? So people are very, very welcome to take that. And on the website, there's also a free webinar on planning techniques for making a change in your career. So that thing I showed you about, like start the end and work backwards, that's in there. How to design your mission statement is in there. How to use the sort of storytelling techniques that I use to feel like the heroine in your own story. That's all in there. So there's like a free class online that you can take at any time. And I have consults. So if you want to like spend some time with me thinking about your plans and your career plans, then you can pop onto the website as well and find it there. So book,
Yay.
chat, quiz,
Nice.
whatever way you play. There are lots of ways to find out more if that would be useful to you.
Oh, perfect. And I'm going to put all the links below this video. So all of our members, go ahead and click all the links below. Connect with Erica today. Let her know that I sent you. And make sure that you pick up her book. I know that as soon as we get off this interview, I'm going to go onto Amazon. I'm going to order it. And I'm going to read it because it looks like such an amazing thing. I'm going to check out her website as well, even further than what I already have. But again, Erica, thank you so, so much for meeting with us today and sharing all your amazing tips and knowledge and stories and all of your useful information, because, we're all in this together. Life's kind of messy, and if we can get out the other side with a clear vision and mission, it's all the better for all of us. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. It's been fun.
Yay! All right, Planning Posse people, go ahead. Again, click all the links below. Connect with Erica. And please be sure to check out her book. What a huge wealth of information. And I will see you all back here next month for your bonus interview. All right, bye.
Bye.